W.F. Howes presents an unabridged recording of The Muslim Problem, Why We're Wrong About Islam and Why It Matters, by Tawseef Khan, narrated by Taheen Modak. Introduction. I was 14 years old when, during one lunch break in high school, I burst into a classroom and announced that I'd become a pagan. My friends were sat on desks, huddled against a radiator for warmth in a room that we claimed as ours during break times. A room in the science building that was musty with the smell of animals because it was home to 2 rabbits and 2 hamsters, a tank of terrapins, and an albino rat. They shrugged in response and continued chatting. My confession came as no great surprise. We already had a pagan in the group, and a white witch too. This was my first act of rebellion against Islam, against the dogmatic, observance-oriented Islam in which I was raised. My critique of Islam actually began much earlier, as an 8-year-old, when my mother first told me off for breaking my prayers to answer the phone. Precocious, perhaps, maybe also unbelievable that I was criticizing religion at such a young age. But my mother had been teaching me about Islam since I was able to speak, and I was incredibly sensitive about being told what to do. When she chastised me in front of my cousin, I was so humiliated I began to privately question the very ritual I was participating in. As I got older, the limits imposed on my relationship with Islam became clearer. I wasn't supposed to question doctrine. God had supposedly determined every aspect of our religious practice. To critique Islam, therefore, was to be a bad Muslim who was destined for hell. When I was old enough to pray independently, my mother began pushing me to perform my 5 compulsory daily prayers. She warned me about God's punishment if I didn't comply. Sometimes I would pretend to fall asleep to avoid them, but she would yank off the bed covers and send me to wash. And in the bathroom, as I sulkily cleaned my hands, my ears, my nose, my face, my arms, my neck and then my feet, I would ask myself why God wanted this. What was the point in prayer if my heart wasn't in it? Prayer was more than a series of movements showing off my religious devotion. If God refused the prayer I had broken off in order to answer the phone, then surely God would refuse these unhappily performed prayers I was offering as a teenager. So my frustration had been bubbling away for several years when I adopted paganism. I knew that many Muslims would have found my behavior disrespectful, insubordinate, insulting to Allah even, but I didn't care. I needed to register my complaint with Allah. I was angry with God and felt that I had every right to be. I had been deeply unhappy for such a long time. It was not the general melancholy and malaise that teenagers experience during puberty.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?